Hi, everybody. Welcome. Welcome to this session. If you could give me a thumbs up, that would be amazing, just to let us know that things are working smoothly. You can see my screen, my audio is also working on your end. Amazing. So I'm seeing some thumbs up going. Awesome. All right, I think we can get started. There will be more people trickling in, but welcome back to another back to school session here at Spaces EDU. Today, we have a really special session on how to make feedback effective and actionable within the Spaces EDU platform. And we all know that feedback is the heartbeat of student growth. So we wanted to take a look together at how we can make that process more impactful and maybe a little easier for ourselves. My name is Tatiana. Just to start, I'd love to tell you a bit more about my background and why I'm so passionate about this work in particular. I'm also joined in the background with my coworker, my colleague Laura, who will be taking a look at all your questions and discussions in the chat and the Q&A portion of the Zoom. I'm the Education Services Manager here at Spaces EDU, and I work closely with educators. But back when I was an academic advisor at York University here in Toronto, I did spend a lot of time and a lot of years with students and particularly giving them feedback. And I quickly learned that feedback is only as good as a student's ability to act on it, as we know. And if it wasn't clear, if it wasn't timely, and if it wasn't realistic, it wouldn't be actionable. And so that realization completely reshaped how I view student growth. And it's why I'm super passionate about helping educators use Spaces EDU to turn feedback into a meaningful dialogue rather than that one-way street. I want it to be more collaborative. So now that you know a bit about me, let's take a look at the goals we have for our session today. So by the end of our time together, my goal is that you'll feel confident in three areas. First, modeling effective feedback. Second, navigating Spaces EDU efficiently. And of course, applying a feedback framework that moves classrooms from more so teacher-led correction, which is what we're used to student-led inquiry. Before we get into the technical details, I wanted to share a comic that I thought perfectly illustrates the challenge most educators face. My team knows that I love a good comic at the beginning of a session, so I thought this one was fitting to share. And we've probably seen this happen before. In the first panel, we have a kid telling another kid that their artwork sucked. Probably experienced this ourselves as adults. And that type of feedback feels more like criticism, like an attack on that student's worth. But then the dad here, he says he's going to teach the other kid a lesson, which we expect a lecture or a confrontation, but instead he gives him a super simple framework. He says, be positive, be specific, and give a next step. So this framework helps shift the focus to the work and turns feedback more into a conversation, which is what we're hoping to achieve today. So this idea of feedback as helpful information is echoed by the late educator Grant Wiggins. He's very popular in the space when it comes to feedback. And he put it perfectly, feedback is information about how we are doing in our efforts to reach a goal. It's that bridge between where the student is and where they need to be. So ultimately, we are just providing students with information, but how we deliver that information is important. So to build that bridge effectively, we can look at Hattie and Timperley's feedback model. Give me a thumbs up if you've heard of this model before. I'm really curious if you have applied it or used it yourself. So their model boils down to three big questions. Where am I going, which is the feed up stage? How am I doing, which is feed back? And where to next, which is feed forward. Now, research tells us that we're often great at the feedback stage, right? But we often miss that critical where to next step, which is the feed forward, which is actually where growth really happens. And I saw some thumbs up, which is awesome. That means you're kind of familiar with this framework or model already. That's great. And beyond those three questions, it's also important to target your feedback at the right level for each student. And so Hattie and Timperley also break feedback into four levels. There's task, process, self-regulation, and self. We often lean on the task level feedback, which is correcting a specific problem, because that level feels safer for us, right? But if we want to build true ownership in our students in their learning, we need to push more into self-regulation. That's where we ask students how can you check on your own work, while we also provide them with the right tools and guidance. So what Hattie and Timperley suggest is that for feedback to be effective, it needs to be targeted at the right level for the student. And so my question for you is, which level do you find yourself using more in your own practice? And maybe which level do you want to apply more this school year? I'm seeing some activity in the chat. From Bochum, yeah. Different language in my district, glow, grow, and goal. Yeah, I love that alliteration. I've only heard of glow and grow, not goal attached to the end, but that's amazing. Yeah, definitely important to include all of those steps. As you reflect on your own practice here and which levels of feedback you're including in your own practices, I personally, when I was an academic advisor, I was leaning towards the process and the self-regulation levels because I was supporting students, with informed decision-making in their post-secondary pathways. So it did make more sense for me to fall on those levels back then. Okay, so how does this actually look in practice? We can see these tools in action within SpacesEDU. So I'm actually going to switch gears here and go into one of my demo classes, test classes to show you how this works. So to bring this to life, we're actually going to follow a student in my class. His name is Dash. And Dash is struggling with his science ecosystem assignment, specifically on food webs. So we'll see how SpacesEDU turns that feedback, giving feedback from a chore into more collaborative, time-saving conversation between the educator and the student. We're going to start right here in activities first, and I'm going to locate that food webs activity that I had assigned, which is right here. And it looks like all my students have submitted their work, so I'm ready to review all of these submissions before officially posting them to their assigned space. And now to see exactly where Dash is getting stuck on his worksheet here that I assigned, we're going to open his submission and dive straight into our first feature, feedback feature called PDF Web Annotations. And so if you weren't aware, this is a new feature that came out in the last school year because we were hearing a ton of educators requesting for annotation capabilities within the platform. And as a first iteration, we wanted to launch this PDF web annotations feature for you all. So this allows you to annotate PDFs specifically, not just you, but students as well. So it's involving students in that process, which is amazing. And so anytime that you see a PDF in the platform, whether it's in an activity or in a post, you will be able to see this annotate button here in blue in the top right corner, which is easily clickable. So when I click on this button, it opens the same PDF document, but within this annotation tool. So I'm going to exit this pop-up, but it will be there for you to read through when you use it for the first time. So definitely take some time to do that. So now we're ready to annotate and review Dash's worksheet here on the food webs. And so as I'm looking at this, I can see Dash has made some classic mistakes when it comes to food webs. He's mixed up his producers and consumers, And in fact, his energy arrows are pointing the wrong way. They're supposed to be reversed. So what I can do is use this pen tool right here, and I can cross these out, just pointing out where the mistakes are, what he should be revisiting over here. So those are markup tools that are available. You also have great shapes that you can use, arrows, you can add text directly to the document. Links is very versatile, even highlight specific areas, underline. Anyways, a ton of different features here available in the annotation tool. On top of that, I can also add like a sticky note or a comment to the annotation tool. So you'll see that there's this little bubble, speech bubble here. Once I click on that, I can add it anywhere on the document. So I wanted to provide some context here as to why I crossed this out. So copying this over, it reads, excellent start. Remember to double check the direction of your arrows. They should point toward the organism that is consuming the energy. So revisit your definitions and correct them accordingly. Now, if you recall, the 4 levels of feedback we had mentioned earlier, we're operating here at 3 levels with this comment, I would say. We have the self, which is the praise, excellent start. There's the task and process, right? We're providing some praise followed by a correction and then prompting the learner to use a strategy so they can self-correct their work. So it's visual, it's immediate, and it's submitted here as a comment within the PDF. So at this point, I'm ready to share this. I've already annotated all the areas I need to, and I'm going to go ahead and find that blue button in the top right corner to save everything. So saving this, and watch what happens here in the feedback section of the activity. The annotated document gets added as a comment, a brand new comment. So when I click on this or when the student clicks on it, they will see those annotations I've made, right? So all of this is now easily accessible for them. So Dash can now review this and apply the corrections to his work. In fact, I'm going to go one step further and give Dash the opportunity to do that so that I can assess his final work once he's made his corrections. So what I'm going to do is go into the top right corner where the 3 dots are and then move this status to request resubmission. And doing so, you can say check the comment section, right? And then request resubmission. So now Dash will have the ability when he logs in to apply that feedback and redo his worksheet. Okay, so now I've reviewed Dash's work, I can move on to the next student. I'm going to go to Ananth and so on and so forth. Now let's say as I'm reviewing this, I'm reviewing the rest of the class, I realize that upon the 3rd student that they're all kind of making the same mistake as Dash. They're mixing up their producers and their consumers. And I'm sure as educators, we've all been there and we've noticed this like pattern with our students when they're trying to grasp a new concept. And truthfully, none of us have the time to type out the same corrective paragraphs 6 times or annotate the same document 6 times, right? So instead, what I'm going to do, instead of annotating 5 different documents, again, with the same corrections, what I'm going to do is just copy paste the same comment I made to Dash. I might want to customize this as well if there are additional, notes to add for other students. And then I'm going to send this over to the student. So I've customized my comment. And now because I know that I will be anticipating similar corrections from other students in my class, I can add this to my comment bank. So in case you didn't know, we have a feedback companion now available in your SpacesEDU class, which is essentially a comment bank that you can personalize. So taking this existing comment, I'm going to go to the top right corner, there are 3 dots, and then I can also add this as, actually, sorry, my apologies. I can add this as a brand new comment through the little magic wand here. And I could categorize this, put it in the subcategory, etc. I will show you this actually once I post this as a posted activity. My apologies. I'm mixing a couple workflows here. No worries. So this would allow me to, once I post this into an nth space, for example, I can go back into that one-to-one space where it was assigned, which is this one right here. And in the top three, in the top corner here, I can add it as a feedback to the feedback companion. So same comment, I can reuse over and over again. I can add this as a new category, or I could file it under science. I can put it under specific proficiency. Maybe this is under emerging. I can add this comment here. So whenever I'm ready to reuse that same comment, I would use that magic wand that you saw in the activity. And anywhere in the platform, go to the category science, subcategory emerging, and then reuse that same comment from there and make the add additional comments if I want to from there. I'm seeing some activity in the chat. Maybe I'll pause right now in case there are additional questions. Yes, Bokum. So this is the feedback companion that I alluded to here. This is the comment bank in question. So I've added that comment to the system, which I can access through the magic wand here. I can also go into my assessment tab to show you where this lives officially. Here we are in the assessment tab, and there's another section for feedback companion. So I can edit my feedback companion from there. I can view what's already in my comment bank. So in the categories, you'll see science is there, and then the new comment that we added as well. And so to add new comments, you can do this individually, or if you upload one of our templates here, which we've linked, you can modify and include your own comments. You can do so, and the system will parse through the content, make sure it's categorized accordingly, just based on what you've set up as categories and subcategories. But I will say the real versatility of the feedback companion is how it helps me build a history of all the feedback and comments I've provided to students over time. I could include, let's say here, a category just for Dash. At any time I give Dash a new piece of feedback in SpacesEDU, I can add it to the comment bank, file it under Dash, and then create a subcategory maybe for each subject area, which is what you're seeing here. I have a bunch of comments from ELA and math, and I'm just going to keep building this throughout the year. That way, when it comes to reporting season, I don't have to guess or rely on memory. I have a complete here searchable history that perfectly articulates each student's growth and progress throughout their learning journey throughout that specific term, and I can speak to that in the report card. I'm going to pause here in case you have any questions about the feedback companion in particular.
Tatiana, I was just going to note that the feedback companion, just to confirm, that has to be enabled on the back end. So just a note that if you don't see that in your account, reach out to your admin or your SpacesEDU contact. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct, Laura. Thank you for calling that out. Yeah, if you're not seeing it as an option in your accounts, it could just be that it's not turned on yet. So it would merit a conversation with your administrator, or you can contact the hello@spacesedu.com support team. Okay, so speaking of the feedback companion and the comment bank, so you can actually use these comments across your SpacesEDU class. So we've seen this applied in activities, we've seen this in posts, But did you know you can also use them in messages, and eventually I'm going to show you in the reporting space. So we're actually going to go into messages right now over here. Messages are a great way for you to connect with specific students, with specific family members, or create like a thread amongst parents and their child. It's definitely a game changer for assessment. Adds a bit of more of a personal touch, so students can process feedback from you. Some students might need a quieter way to process that feedback. And messages is a great way to help build that safe one-to-one connection between you and the student. So, for example, Dash, he might be a quiet student, he might be a little shy to speak out loud in class, so he needs a safer way to contribute or a safer way to receive feedback from you. So, in messages, what I can do is actually contact Dash directly by composing a new message here. And then I can select Dash from my class list over here, right? I can give my message a title. So if you want, we can call this Food Webs Activity, and then move on to the message over here. I have composed a message here. But the feedback companion is also available, as you'll see the magic wand here, and you have access to the same comment bank, essentially. So I've sent over my message to Dash. If I want Dash to be able to reply to me and ask further questions or for clarification, I can turn this on for two-way messaging. Very important to do. I can also check in here if Dash has read my message. So the read receipts are located just next to the time on the bottom right of the message. By clicking on this, it lets me know if it has been read or not by the recipient. And let's say I know that Dash actually responds better to hearing an encouraging voice rather than reading text. No problem. I can quickly drop a voice note. So there's the microphone here available, and I can record my feedback out loud if this is the best way for Dash to process that information. And we know as well, this research shows that students just respond better to voice when feedback is, given vocally. And so messages allows us to build trust, better trust with the students who might need that extra nudge in SpacesEDU.
Tatiana, just a quick question from Bokum in the chat. I'm just wondering about parents' feedback regarding Spaces. Did they feel overwhelmed when they use it? Some parents are not quite techie.
That's a great question. We've had really positive feedback from families when it comes to Spaces. First, what they like to do is they like to download the application. And because it's definitely more accessible through the app, and they get notifications as well. And one way that we recommend that districts or schools support parents with that transition to SpacesEDUs to host SpacesEDU nights, information nights, or you can embed that in their parent-teacher interview nights and have a dedicated session for that. We have some presentations that you can customize as well, and just walk them through the entire experience. We have other resources dedicated specifically to the family account, explaining SpacesEDU as a concept and walking them through the whole navigation process. So I'm happy to include that in the follow-up email as well. But what I would say is if it's your first time implementing SpacesEDU with your classroom and parents, is to take it really slow. You might want to just simplify your entire setup in SpacesEDU so it's easier for families to follow along. And then gradually, similar to how we scaffold in the classroom, you can add on another layer to the experience, to the SpacesEDU features that you decide to use. Yeah, and I see Laura is just echoing that in the chat there. Thanks, Laura. Really great questions. But speaking of messages and just like families in general, I would say messages is just another great way to quickly loop in families too. And when it comes to speaking about feedback or just checking in on their student. So if I wanted to include Dash's father, which is Bob, and keep him in the loop, just closing that feedback loop and making it truly collaborative, I can also compose another separate thread over here and selecting Dash's dad, Bob, on the list. If I want to, I can also include Dash in that conversation. That is up to you. And then again, the subject could be about anything in particular. I think this one right here, we are talking about science. So I'm just going to put science, compose the message. Over here, I have a message ready. There we go. And then remembering to turn on two-way messaging so that Bob can respond to me if he has any questions. So I'm giving Bob some context here about Dash's performance and overall progress in a specific science experiment or activity. And I'm also providing Bob with an action item. So I'm recommending that he look at the post, Dash's post together this evening, and then ask him specific questions about the process or about his learning to just get more information or have him reflect on his work. And so this allows us to turn like a simple update into a more active and actionable, and also just improve that at-home learning partnership with families. I know I've covered quite a bit here so far. Is there anything I can revisit for you today or at this point in time? Okay. All right. So one last thing I wanted to share is actually the reporting space. So I'm going to head into the Spaces tab here. And within the reporting space, this is where most districts would use, they would use the reporting space for formal reporting or providing progress from term to term. So in Dash's reporting space here, what I could do is actually, when report card season finally arrives, I can gather all of those like celebrated milestones seamlessly in the reporting space. And we can actually use that feedback companion we built earlier and update the report card comments. So if I were to edit the report right here and scroll down to the dedicated section, let's say I want to put areas of improvement here. I can click on the magic wand and then go to, if this is about science I want to talk about or mention here, I can do so. And then you can provide a subcategory you saw it earlier at specific proficiency levels. And then once you select that, it populates it for you, and then you can add additional context over here as well, and directly within the reporting space. So if your school or district is using the reporting space, it might be nice to compile those comments before you get started and update your feedback companion. That way it would streamline that whole process for you as you complete the reporting space comments. All right. Any questions about the reporting space here?
There was one request. You kind of just briefly showed it there, but just to go back to the feedback companion, to show how to add those categories. I know you just kind of did a little bit of a quick one from the reporting space, but maybe back at the feedback companion.
Oh yeah, of course. Let's go back here. So in this assessment tab within the feedback companion, so if you recall, there are two ways to add comments to the feedback companion. So individually, you can add a comment here and then like manually create a category from the drop down. You can add a new subject, Let's say we're going to add a new subject over here, or in this case, a new student name. I want to start filing comments that I need to reload in the feedback companion, and then I can add a new subject area. So in the comments section, just going to put a quick test for you and add that comment. So that's one way to do it. But if you have a whole document or a bunch of comments that you want to throw in there, you might want to consider using the template. So when you click on the upload button, there is a link to our templates here. It leads you to the Help Center article on the feedback companion, just walking you through that process, how to populate it, etc. And there's a blank document here that you can download as well. Now, I don't believe I have access to Microsoft Word here, but let me try to see if I can grab the template from a Google Doc, which I believe I do have access to right now. So this is what the template looks like. So once you download the document, you'll be able to include the category and then subcategory if there are any, and then each bullet point would be a piece of feedback. We also note here if you put name in brackets, that personalizes the comment and it auto populates with the student's name once you add it to the comments section. Hopefully that answers your question, Bokum? Okay, amazing. All right, any additional questions here? No problem, Bokum. Okay, so that is how SpacesEDU supports your feedback cycle. It ensures your feedback is always effective and actionable, as you saw. And I really hope that you give any of these tools a try this coming school year. In fact, I would love to know if there are any parts here that kind of piqued your interests when it comes to feedback. Is there a specific tool or strategy that you are excited to use in SpacesEDU? If you don't want to share, that's okay, but write it down just so you remember to go back and try it in your own class. I'll make sure to include like dedicated resources for each tool that we explore together here today. Okay, and then one final call for questions if there are any pertaining to any of the feedback tools we looked at together, whether it's the PDF web annotations, comments, the comment bank with the feedback companion, messages, reporting space even, please let me know. Would love to address that for you before you leave today. Okay, well, if there's one thing you can take away from this session today about effective feedback and actionable feedback is this: be positive, be specific, and most importantly, always give a next step. Thank you so much for joining me and the team today on the final Back to School Summit session. We really appreciate you taking the time to sit down with us. You could have been literally anywhere today, but you decided to learn more about SpacesEDU and how we can make your lives easier. If you have some time, please fill out the survey. There will be a survey that will pop up once you exit the Zoom. You can also scan the QR code here on the screen, or I will be including the survey in the follow-up email as well. Thank you so much again for your time today, and hope to see you very soon.